suppose rather than taking any time, what I'd like to do in terms of opening up this conversation, where we're being asked to kind of think about the dynamics and kind of balancing the collaboration within PPI, and core to PPI are the partnerships that we are involved with, get involved with, and how they evolve. So in introducing themselves, I'd like to invite Padraig and Ciaran to maybe talk to us briefly about how this partnership began. So maybe Padraig, I might start with, or Padraig, and then maybe Ciaran.
Good morning, everyone. Lovely to be here. So my name is Padraig Carroll. I'm a PhD student in the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and I arrived at PPI through my studies in UCC and NUIG, where I got interested in PPI through psychology and research. So now I'm studying PPI in RCSI, so it's really come full circle. So I got interested in this project, and I started in 2020. In March 2020, I joined RCSI, and in March 2020, we all went into lockdown. So it was a really interesting time to get started in PPI and get into research and figure out how exactly we're going to carry out PPI when we were all stuck at home. So I joined the PPI project in RCSI, which started off as part of a collaboration between the IRFU Charitable Trust, SFI Amber, and the Royal College of Surgeons to host a spinal cord repair project. And as part of the project, I thought it'd be really valuable to get the perspectives of seriously injured rugby players as part of that work. So they set up a PPI advisory panel, and Ciaran will tell you a bit more about that. But that panel works as part of the spinal cord repair project to collaborate and really inform the research. And so I joined in 2020 and started working from there. And we started working together over Zoom. I think our first phone call was.
I'm an IT illiterate. I didn't have some idea of what, the Zoom process and all the rest. I had no idea. So this guy has guided me over that period when it comes to the digital aspects, shall we say, of our communication.
I didn't know how Zoom worked when we started this. Yeah. But yeah, so we started from there over Zoom, and then when lockdown ended, we were able to meet again. We started working on our PPI together in person, and it's developed from there. And I suppose Ciaran will give you a bit more of a story as he got involved in that.
Sure.
I was approached by a man called Cliff Byrne. Cliff is a former facial maxillary consultant. He's also a member of the IRFU Charitable Trust. Him, together with a man called John Quinlan, head of orthopedics in the Tala University Hospital, also a member of the trust. They approached the head of research in the College of Surgeons, a man called Fergal O'Brien, and they just asked him a simple question: would it at all be possible to initiate research into spinal cord injury repair? The answer was yes, thank God, because not an awful lot has been done in this particular area. So I'm grateful to be involved with this particular project, and I do feel privileged to be involved in this particular project. Long may it continue. The advantage of the association with the Charitable Trust is, I'll be straight, they provide seed funding for the research to continue. So now it's not core funding, and there's always a need for more funding. But seed funding is very welcome. That's my connection. Really.
And maybe following on from that, then, Ciaran, just in terms of how that relationship has evolved, maybe from the beginning to where it is now. So I take it that neither of you knew each other, or perhaps the organisations hadn't been involved previously. So it'd be really interesting to hear how that has evolved.
Yeah. There's the group itself. It's a fairly sizable group. In fact, I like to look at it as three sub-groupings within one group. You have 3 injured players, and when I say injured players, I mean players who became paralysed as a consequence of playing rugby. You have 3 clinicians. You have John and Cliff, but you also have Emer. Emer Smith is a rehabilitative consultant. She works out in the National Rehabilitation Hospital and also in the Mater. And then you have a team of lab-based researchers, in addition to facilitating scientists like Padraig. Michelle Flood would be another facilitating scientist. So it's a fairly sizable group, but it works on the basis of PPI. And it does so, as far as I'm concerned, there's 3 pillars to PPI. We listen to each other, we learn from each other, and we continuously question each other. That's the glue that keeps the group together. So well, Padraig has his perspective on that as well. I met Padraig about a year into the process. I think it was just a year before, and thank God, as I said, he arrived to explain Zoom to me. And
yeah, it'd be lovely to hear a little bit more about that, Padraig, in terms of just the, the being questioned, but also the listening to, and maybe some of the challenges in that.
Yeah, well, look, I come from a background again of psychology, and I'm very lucky to be part of such a diverse and multidisciplinary research team. As Ciaran said, we have the seriously injured players, we have the clinicians, and we have the researchers who are divided up again. There's neuroscientists, chemists, bioinformaticists, many others who are all part of the team. And we all have our own knowledge and experiences and knowledge base to work off of, and we all come at this from a different perspective. So that's been really, really valuable, So in terms of how that's kind of developed over time, I think we've all become a lot closer in terms of understanding each other. I remember the very early PPI sessions might have kind of been very much discussing, look, this is what we think, this is what we think, and just kind of talking back and forth. But as we went on, it really became more collaborative. We all grew closer, and we all began to understand each other's perspectives a lot better. I think someone remarked that they found it tough to tell at times where Ciaran ends and Adrian, who's one of our neuroscientists, begins in terms of just understanding the knowledge. So in terms of knowledge sharing, in terms of understanding each other better, we all learned so much about each other throughout the process. That's just been really, really beneficial, I think, strengthened the project.
And maybe from both of your perspectives, was there a particular point where that became really real to you both, that this was more than maybe 2 groups talking together, but that rather there was something kind of collective, that together you were achieving something that neither of you separately were going to be able to achieve?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Before this project, there was 3 intrinsic difficulties with spinal cord injury repair. The first was a disinclination to do anything at all. Now, it's understandable given the prognosis given to an individual with a spinal cord injury. That lack of movement, permanent. That lack of sensation, permanent. Bodily functions never be the same again. Oh, and given the fact that your system has taken such a hit, the likelihood of infection, recurring infection into the future is very, very high. And some of these infections, fatal, like sepsis would be very close to the top of that. So yeah, that's clearly all those issues are addressed. In addition, then I would say a lack of interest. Well, that's understandable. That's understandable also because spinal cord injury in the population is only a small figure. And thankfully, that's the case. Absolutely, thankfully, that's the case. It's nothing like cancer that is absolutely widespread. So cancer naturally would and needs to attract more funding. And then there's the issue of funding itself. The funding and the interest, what good funding without interest, what good interest without funding. So clearly interdependent. It's a circular problem. But again, those 3 issues, if you like, the disinclination, the lack of interest, and the lack of all addressed in with this particular project. So yeah, when I say I'm grateful and it gives me joy and it is a privilege to be associated, I mean it. We've just got some more seed funding from the Charitable Trust and from Amber, so it's going to continue, and it's a pleasure from my point of view to be involved.
And from your perspective, Padraig?
So just to build on what Ciaran said, collaboration and relationship building is really important to what we do. One of the things that stands out to me and I would consider is when we're talking about spinal cord research, we're talking about research that takes place generally in a laboratory that's very kind of far away removed from the day-to-day realities and the facts of living with a condition. And it's often being worked on by researchers who may not be interacting with people who have that condition on a daily or regular basis. So that's one of the things that I find PPI really does for a project like ours. It's regular collaboration, and you're regularly working together with people who are, living with the condition that you're researching. I think that's particularly important for preclinical science. And one of the things that always stood out is I was talking to one of the scientists on the research team, and I was just talking about PPI and how it's kind of impacted his work. And he's saying, like, look, has it changed what I do day to day in a lab? What cells am I working on? What materials am I working with? No. Has it changed the way I think about my research? Completely and utterly. Absolutely. You can really see, they say they can really see, a connection between what they do, and the application and the real life impact of that.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I think my time has been called now, but I'd like to thank Padraig and Ciaran both very much for this part of the conversation, and I think we're moving on to the next part now. So thank you both.